The gunshot echoed through the rain-soaked night before the glass shattered. Mr. Jacob clutched his chest, stumbling backward into his study as crimson bloomed across his white shirt. His trembling hand reached for the mahogany desk, fingers scrambling for the sealed envelope bearing his daughter's name. The letter slipped from his grasp as he collapsed, the words he'd written in desperation now sealed with his dying breath. "My word is my bond," he whispered into the darkness. But sometimes a man's word becomes his curse. 3 days later, Jane stood in the cemetery wearing black. She didn't recognize from her own closet. The funeral had been a parade of vultures dressed in expensive suits, distant relatives emerging from shadows to whisper about debts and deals her father had supposedly made. She'd ignored them all, focusing instead on the weight of the mahogany box being lowered into the earth, taking with it the only parent she'd ever known. Her father's lawyer approached as the crowd dispersed, pressing the envelope into her hands. "He insisted you read this alone, Miss Jacob, before you make any decisions about the company." That night, in her father's study where the carpet still bore faint stains no cleaner could remove, Jane tore open the envelope. The letter was written in her father's shaking hand, words that would shatter everything she believed about the man who raised her. "My dearest Jane, if you're reading this, I've run out of time. 20 years ago, I made a deal with Luca De-Santo to save our company from bankruptcy. I didn't just borrow money. I stole from him, thinking I could outsmart a man who built an empire on the bones of those who betrayed him. I couldn't. The company you're inheriting isn't just a business. It's a debt. And Luca always collects. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from the choices I made. Your father, who loved you more than his own life." The letter slipped from her fingers. Jane's hands shook as she poured herself her father's whiskey, the amber liquid burning down her throat like liquid truth. Everything she'd known was a lie. The honorable businessman, the philanthropist, the father who taught her that integrity was worth more than gold, all of it built on stolen money and broken promises. Her first board meeting as acting CEO was supposed to be a formality. Jane had prepared for condolences and procedural transitions. What she hadn't prepared for was the delivery that interrupted the proceedings. A single black rose in a crystal vase carried in by a man whose eyes held no warmth. The note was simple. Every debt must be paid. LD. The board members exchanged nervous glances. The oldest among them, a man who'd worked with her father for 30 years, cleared his throat. "Miss Jacob, perhaps we should discuss your father's extended business relationships." "You mean Luca De-Santo?" Jane's voice was steady even as her pulse hammered. "I've read my father's letter. I know about the debt." The room fell silent. The old board member leaned forward. "Then you know you're not just inheriting a company. You're inheriting a war your father started but couldn't finish." That night, Jane tore through her father's private files with the desperation of someone searching for a way out. What she found instead was a labyrinth of shell companies, offshore accounts, and hush payments that painted a picture of a man she never knew. Her father hadn't just stolen from Luca once. He'd been siphoning money for years, building an empire on blood money while pretending to be clean. You won't find an escape route in those files. Jane spun around, heart lurching. A man stood in her office doorway, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Daniel Pierce, her father's protege and the company's chief financial officer. "How did you get in here?" she demanded. "Your father gave me a key years ago." Daniel stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "We need to talk about Luca De-Santo. Your father made me promise to protect you if anything happened to him. By sneaking into my office at midnight, by telling you the truth." Daniel's expression was grave. "Luca doesn't forgive, Jane. He reclaims, and right now, you're the only thing standing between him and everything your father built. What does he want? Everything. The company, the assets, the legacy." Daniel paused, his jaw tightening. "And probably your cooperation in dismantling everything your father stood for." Jane wanted to argue, to defend the man who raised her, but the files spread across her desk told a different story. "My father was a thief. Your father was a survivor. He made impossible choices in impossible situations." Daniel moved closer, his voice softening. "Let me help you navigate this. You don't have to face Luca alone. Before Jane could respond, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. The message made her blood run cold. Your father made promises he couldn't keep. I hope you're smarter. You have 48 hours. If you're already hooked, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. This story is about to get darker. The explosion came during lunch. Jane was in a meeting with department heads when the windows rattled and car alarms screamed to life outside. Security rushed in, faces pale, and guided her to the window. In the parking lot below, her father's old Mercedes, the one she'd been meaning to sell, was engulfed in flames. That was meant to be a message, not a murder, Daniel said quietly, standing beside her as firefighters arrived. Luca's warning you. Next time, you might be inside. Jane's hands trembled, but she forced them still. What would my father do? Your father would run, but you're not your father. Daniel turned to face her. There might be another way, a way to buy you time and protection. What kind of protection could possibly stop a man like Luca De-Santo? Daniel's answer came 2 hours later in the form of a proposal, literal and figurative. They stood in her office, the smoke from the explosion still visible through the windows as he laid out his plan. Marry me. Jane stared at him. You've lost your mind. Think about it. My family has connections, resources, political protection your father never had. If you're my wife, you're untouchable. Luca can't touch you without starting a war he doesn't want. That's insane. That's survival. Daniel stepped closer, his voice urgent. I know this isn't how you imagined your life, but right now you need allies more than you need romance. Give me 6 months. Let me help you stabilize the company, pay down the debt, and find a way out of this nightmare. Then, if you want, we can quietly divorce and you can have your life back. Jane looked at the burning car below, at the files documenting her father's crimes, at the black rose still sitting on her desk. She thought about Luca De-Santo, a man she'd never met, but who already owned pieces of her life she couldn't even identify. 48 hours, she whispered. He gave me 48 hours. Then we get married tomorrow. Daniel's hand found hers. Trust me, Jane. I won't let him destroy you. The wedding was a media circus. Headlines screamed about the merger of two business empires, photographers clamoring for shots of the grieving heiress and her handsome protector. Jane wore white and smiled for cameras while feeling like a lamb being led to slaughter in silk and lace. But somewhere in the crowd of well-wishers and business associates, she felt eyes on her, watching, waiting, calculating. That night, as Daniel slept in the guest room of her father's mansion, their marriage was protection, not passion. Jane couldn't shake the feeling that she'd made a terrible mistake. She wandered through the empty halls, past portraits of her father in better times, and found herself back in his study. The voicemail on his old desk phone had a single message, timestamped from the night he died. Jacob, you're making this harder than it needs to be. I don't want your daughter. I want what's mine. But if you keep running, I'll have no choice but to collect in other ways. My word is my bond, old friend. I hope yours was too. The voice was smooth, controlled, dangerous. Luca De-Santo. Jane's finger hovered over the delete button when she heard it, the low murmur of Daniel's voice drifting up from downstairs. She crept to the landing, heart pounding, and peered over the railing. Daniel stood in the foyer, phone pressed to his ear, voice too quiet for normal conversation. Tell Luca she's where he wants her. The marriage happened exactly as planned. A pause. No, she doesn't suspect anything. She thinks I'm protecting her. Another pause, then a dark laugh. She'll cooperate. She has no choice now. The floor seemed to tilt beneath Jane's feet. The protector was the predator. The ally was the enemy. And she'd married him, given him legal rights to everything she owned, trapped herself in a cage of her own desperate making. She backed away from the railing, mind racing. If Daniel was working for Luca, then this whole thing had been orchestrated. The explosion, the tight deadline, the convenient solution, all of it, designed to push her into a corner where marriage seemed like the only escape. But escape to what? And how deep did this conspiracy go? Drop a comment below if you think Jane can outsmart them both. And smash that like button if you're on the edge of your seat. Jane spent the next week playing the role of devoted newlywed while secretly digging through Daniel's files, tracking his calls, and following the money trail her father had left behind. What she discovered made her sick. Daniel had been working with Luca for years, helping her father embezzle money while reporting every move back to the crime lord. Her father hadn't just stolen from Luca. He'd been betrayed by the man he trusted most, and now that man was sleeping down the hall from her. She needed answers. Real answers. And there was only one person who could give them to her. The warehouse sat on the edge of the industrial district, one of her father's old properties that had been abandoned for years. Jane sent the message through an encrypted channel she'd found in her father's files. I want to meet. Tonight. Come alone. She didn't sign it. She didn't have to. Luca De-Santo would know exactly who sent it. Jane arrived first, gun tucked into her jacket, her father's gun, the one he kept in his desk drawer. She didn't know if she could actually pull the trigger, but holding it made her feel less helpless. The warehouse was dark, except for moonlight streaming through broken windows, creating patterns of shadow and silver across the concrete floor. Footsteps echoed in the darkness, slow, deliberate, confident. Jane Jacob, the voice from the voicemail, now given physical form. You're braver than your father, or more foolish. I haven't decided which. Luca De-Santo stepped into the light and Jane's breath caught. He wasn't what she expected. No gold chains or gaudy displays of wealth. Just a man in an expensive suit, dark hair silvered at the temples, eyes that held the weight of 1,000 buried secrets. He was handsome in the way dangerous things often are, beautiful and deadly in equal measure. You wanted to meet. Here I am. Luca's hands were empty, visible, non-threatening. What do you want, Jane? The truth. Why did you really have my father killed? Killed? Luca's eyebrow arched. Is that what you think happened? The autopsy said heart attack, but there was blood. His letter, the timing. Your father died of guilt and whiskey, not bullets. Luca moved closer and Jane's hand instinctively moved toward her gun. He noticed but didn't react. I've killed men, Jane. I won't insult your intelligence by denying it. But your father? I wanted him alive. Dead men can't pay their debts. Then what do you want from me? What I've always wanted. What your father promised me 20 years ago and then stole when he got scared. Luca stopped 3 feet away, close enough that Jane could see the silver flecks in his dark eyes. He didn't just borrow money from me, Jane. He made a deal. When you turned 18, you would marry me, binding our families and ensuring his debt would be forgiven through alliance. The words hit like physical blows. That's insane. My father would never. Your father was desperate. His company was failing. His wife, your mother, was dying of cancer and the medical bills were crushing him. I offered him a way out. Money, connections, protection. All he had to do was promise me his daughter's hand when she came of age. Luca's expression remained neutral, stating facts without emotion. He took the money, saved his company, paid for your mother's treatment. Then, when you turned 18, he ran. Took more money, hid you away at boarding schools and universities abroad, kept stealing from me while breaking his promise. Jane's mind reeled. You wanted to buy me, like property. I wanted an alliance. Your father turned it into ownership by betraying me. Luca's voice hardened. I don't force women into marriage, Jane. If you'd been presented to me as agreed, we would have negotiated terms you could live with. But your father made it impossible for either of us to have a choice. And Daniel? Was he part of this from the beginning? Daniel Pierce is ambitious and greedy. He came to me 3 years ago, offering information in exchange for a piece of your father's empire when I finally collected. Luca's lips curved in something too cold to be a smile. I let him think he was playing both sides. In reality, he's playing neither. He's a useful tool, nothing more. Why are you telling me this? Because you came here seeking truth, and I'm giving it to you. Your father's debt is real. The promise he made was real. But I'm not your father, Jane. I keep my word. Luca extended his hand. Work with me. Give me what I'm owed. Not you. I no longer want a reluctant bride, but the assets your father stole, the money he laundered, the respect he took from me. Help me recover what's mine, and I'll let you keep your freedom and your father's legitimate business. And if I refuse, then Daniel will continue to dismantle everything from the inside, transfer assets to accounts you'll never find, and eventually arrange for both of us to have unfortunate accidents. He thinks he's clever enough to eliminate us both and take the empire for himself. Luca's hand remained steady. You need me as much as I need you right now. Before Jane could respond, the warehouse door crashed open. Daniel stood silhouetted against the streetlights, gun raised, face twisted with rage. I knew you'd betray me, Jane. I knew you'd go running to him. His gun swung between them. You were supposed to be grateful, supposed to be weak, but you're just like your father, too stupid to know when you're beaten. Daniel, Luca's voice was calm. Put the gun down. This doesn't have to end badly for you. Doesn't have to end badly. You used me. Both of you used me. Daniel's laugh was unhinged. I spent years playing both sides, feeding you information, helping Jacob steal from you, while you fed me scraps. Did you think I wouldn't figure it out? I was never going to get the Empire. You were just using me to keep tabs on him. You were useful, Luca confirmed, until you weren't. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. But it wasn't Daniel who fired first. It was Jane. Years of target practice with her father, Sunday afternoons at the range she'd thought were just quality time, muscle memory she didn't know she'd retained. The bullet caught Daniel in the shoulder, spinning him around. His gun clattered across the concrete floor. Luca moved faster than Jane thought possible, kicking the weapon away and pinning Daniel with a knee to his back. Call your security, Luca said calmly, as if he hadn't just witnessed Jane shoot a man. Tell them you caught an intruder trying to rob the warehouse. Leave the rest to me. Jane's hands shook as she pulled out her phone. Adrenaline made her fingers clumsy, but she managed to dial. As sirens wailed in the distance, she looked down at Daniel, who was cursing and bleeding and promising revenge. You were supposed to protect me, she whispered. He was supposed to be smart enough to know you don't betray a De-Santo and live to profit from it. Luca stood, wiping his hands on a handkerchief as if cleaning up attempted murder was routine. The police will take him. By tomorrow, evidence will surface about his embezzlement, his connections to several criminal enterprises, and his plot to kill us both. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison. And me? That depends on you. The police came. Statements were given. Daniel was taken away, screaming about conspiracies and betrayals that made him sound insane. Jane watched it all from a distance, feeling disconnected from her own body, as if she were watching someone else's life unravel. When the warehouse finally emptied, only she and Luca remained. My father's debt, Jane said. Show me exactly what he took. Every dollar, every asset, every lie. If I'm going to pay it back, I need to know what I'm paying for. Luca smiled, genuinely this time. Now you're thinking like a De-Santo. Over the next 2 weeks, Jane and Luca worked in an uneasy alliance, untangling the web her father had woven. It was worse than she'd imagined. The money hadn't just been stolen, it had been laundered through charities her father founded, children's hospitals and scholarships that bore her mother's name. Every good deed had been financed with blood money. He was trying to wash away his guilt, Jane said, staring at the ledgers spread across her father's desk. Build something clean with dirty money. Most people do. Luca sat across from her, reviewing contracts. The question is whether the good outweighs the bad. Your father saved a lot of lives with my money. Does that make him a thief or a Robin Hood? It makes him a coward who couldn't face his own choices. Jane closed the ledger. How much total? 43 million with interest, plus the insult, which is harder to quantify. Jane's laugh was hollow. I don't have 43 million. No, but you have assets, properties, investments, the legitimate business your father built after he stole from me. Luca leaned back. Sign over 60% of the company to me. I'll install my own people, ensure nothing else disappears, and we'll call it even. You keep creative control, keep your father's name on the building, and you're free. 60%? I'm being generous. I could take it all. Jane studied him, this man who'd been the monster in her father's closet, the boogeyman used to justify 20 years of paranoia and lies. He was dangerous, undoubtedly, but he was also honest in a way her father never had been. What about the promise, the marriage alliance? I told you, I don't want a reluctant bride. Luca's eyes held hers. But if you ever decide you want an alliance of equals, someone who won't betray you the way your father and Daniel did, someone who understands that power is something you build together, my offer stands, not as payment, as choice. Jane stood, walking to the window where she'd watched her father's car burn. The city sprawled below, full of light and shadow, danger and opportunity. She thought about her father's letter, his final words. My word is my bond. She turned back to Luca. 60%. But I want oversight, monthly reports. And if I catch any one of you stealing, the deal's off. Agreed. Luca extended his hand. This time, Jane shook it. The contracts were signed at dawn. By noon, Jane stood on her father's balcony, her balcony now, watching the city wake up. The company had a new majority shareholder. Her bank account was significantly smaller. Daniel was awaiting trial. Her father's legacy was tarnished but salvaged, and somehow, impossibly, she felt free for the first time since opening that letter. "My word is my bond," she said to the empty air. "And I choose whose blood it binds." Below, on the street, a black car idled. Through the tinted windows, she couldn't see his face. But she knew Luca was watching, waiting, wondering what she'd become now that she understood the game her father had been playing. Jane smiled. Let him wonder. She'd learned something her father never did. Sometimes the only way to escape a promise is to keep it on your own terms. The debt was paid. The alliance was formed. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't bound by anyone's choices, but her own. The car pulled away. Jane turned back to her office, to the empire she'd inherited and transformed, and got to work. If this story kept you hooked until the very end, make sure you subscribe for more thrilling tales like this. Drop a comment telling me what you'd do in Jane's position, and hit that like button to support the channel. Your engagement helps us bring you more stories that keep you on the edge of your seat. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.